Hi everyone, this is Michal from Airhead, and today we'll go through a quite small, however, an incredibly interesting topic from the ATPL subject AGK of oxygen. The oxygen is a small subject, small topic within AGK that you'll see and you must learn for your exams. And you'll probably see 2 to 3 questions in your actual exam. However, it's an incredibly interesting one that you'll use throughout your entire career and is very safety critical. So let's go through the latest 5 questions that we have seen in our question bank and add some more details and interesting facts for you to know. So jumping into the first question, the oxygen for the passengers should automatically be presented and ready for use before exceeding a cabin altitude of. So most usually a commercial or an airliner aircraft will be pressurized at a cabin altitude of approximately 8,000 feet, and they will be this will be between 6,000 to 8,000 feet. If you're flying a private commercial business jet, this will be a lower altitude, and essentially this is a safe zone for all the passengers to feel okay and for aircraft to be at a safe pressurization. By law, you might remember that if you are flying above 10,000 feet, you can only do so for 30 minutes without oxygen, and the threshold for obligatory all-time supplemental oxygen use is 13,000 feet. You also probably remember from HPL, and if you haven't studied, then remember that the compensatory zone ends at 15,000 feet, meaning above 15,000 feet, your body is not able to compensate for the lack of partial oxygen pressure in the air. This means that by law as well, the oxygen is needed above 15,000 feet, and all automatic systems will make sure that passengers are able to use it above 15,000 feet. And this is the threshold above which the masks have to be deployed. Most usually, this will be slightly earlier at 13 to 14,000 feet. And also remember that oxygen warning. So if there is a warning about cabin pressure, it will sound in a cockpit just before passing 10,000 feet. So entering that 30-minute legal mark, a red light or a warning will sound in a cockpit. Sometimes this will be 9,750 feet of cabin altitude. However, it has to be below 10,000. And for question number 2, a pressurized airplane is flying at flight level 370 and experiences a rapid decompression. Which of the following statements about the oxygen system is correct? So like we said before, and if we have a cabin altitude above 15,000 feet, the oxygen masks are required to drop down automatically. So of course, if we are experiencing a rapid decompression at this level, then the masks will deploy very quickly because the cabin altitude will start rising well below 15,000 equally fast. And now, what happens when the oxygen masks drop? So, in most narrow-body jets, the system that they use is a chemically generated oxygen system, meaning you have a little a box above each row of seats. This will comprise of sodium chloride and an iron filling. And when they mix together, they actually create oxygen. These masks will be good to use for about 15 to 20 minutes maximum, and they will only start working as when you pull the mask. And when you pull the mask and when the chemical reaction begins, it is impossible to stop it. It's like a little sparkler that you use for New Year's. You light it up, and then you cannot really stop it. So this is the time that the crew has to go to a safer level, usually below the 10,000 feet mark. So now knowing this, let's go back into the questions. The oxygen masks are automatically presented to flight crew members. That is not true. The flight crews have quick donning masks, which they have to put on themselves. The automatic mask presentation has been activated. The oxygen flow will start flowing immediately. This is also not correct. In the conventional, the chemically generated oxygen systems, we have to pull on the mask in order to start the reaction. After an automatic mask presentation for the cabin crew and passengers, oxygen starts to flow only after the mask has been firmly pulled. This sounds good, like we discussed. And in general manual, override of the automatic presentation of passenger oxygen mask is not possible. No, the cockpit and so the flight and cabin crews, they can actually automatically turn the masks on and um, press a button to make them present to the passengers with just one button. And here there is a little fun fact for you. Some older aircraft like the 737 or some 777s, they actually have a centralized oxygen storage, so they do not use a chemical oxygen generators. And also some of the newest aircraft, like the Dreamliner or Airbus A350, they have something that's called pool socks. And instead of having a chemically generated oxygen above each row, they have actually little bottles of oxygen above each row of seats for the passengers with the actual oxygen inside. Question number 3. You are operating at high altitude, so above 12,000 feet, in a non-pressurized aircraft, and oxygen equipment is required. What mode of operation would the system be set to? So the basic and most common mode that you will be using if you will be flying a non-pressurized aircraft will be a diluted demand. And what it means is that the system is giving you equivalently more oxygen as you climb higher, so you're getting the right mix of oxygen and the cabin air as you breathe, and this will increase up to 100% of oxygen at the altitude of 32,000 feet. So above 32,000 feet, at 32,000 feet and above, you're getting 100% oxygen from diluted demand. Of course, you can bypass this using the 100% button, which will give you 100% of oxygen whenever you need to, and the emergency button, which will actually give you the oxygen under slight pressure, meaning if you put on the mask, it will keep the fumes off and it will increase that partial pressure of oxygen as you breathe, and is legally required to be worn above a certain altitude, above 40,000 feet, by at least one crew member as you fly, in order to be safe. As in case of a rapid decompression, the time of useful consciousness is around 5 to 10 seconds at these high altitudes. So in this case, diluted demand is the normal mode of work. This is what we will use and what you will use in your flight school if you'll be flying at altitudes above 10,000 feet during your instrument or the VFR navigation, depending on your school. Question number 4 is about a smoke hood. And here I need you to remember two things. So the questions will ask you about smoke hood or smoke mask. The main difference is that a smoke hood is a device used by the crews, and you also need to check for one in the cockpit every time you start and begin your day. And a smoke hood is a thing you put on your head, and it gives you constant flow of oxygen to keep the smoke away. However, this one is not on demand, it's a constant flow. If it's a smoke mask, then it will give you oxygen on demand, so it will only put the oxygen out as you breathe in. So these are the two key differences between smoke hood and smoke mask. So in case of the smoke hood, this will be a device that covers the whole head with a continuous oxygen flow. And this makes sense. Like I mentioned, if it was a smoke mask, then we do not have a continuous flow. The oxygen is given to us on demand, and they will cover our entire head way below the neck, actually. And they also make for a great Halloween costume. So going for the last question, the disadvantages of chemical oxygen source compared to a gaseous one for the passenger cabin are, so like we mentioned, some aircraft have chemical oxygen sources and generators, and these are mostly the narrow bodies. These are the low-cost airlines that you fly across Europe, Ryanair, Wizz Air, EasyJet, and most of the legacies that fly the narrow bodies, they will have chemical oxygen generators. And of course, the bigger, newer jets, Dreamliners and A350s will have a gaseous ones above each row. So the main disadvantages of the chemical one is, of course, the flow cannot be modulated. The oxygen just goes out, and you just breathe in for a set period of time. And they do have less capacity, and because, of course, it's a chemical generated oxygen that doesn't control the flow, doesn't control much more in this case. And lastly, a risk of fire and or explosion. And not necessarily, of course, oxygen is an extremely flammable gas. And for the questions also, I want you to remember that a lot of questions will ask you about dangerous substances near oxygen. For the exam's sake, remember that grease and oil combined with oxygen can create a chemical reaction and actually spark a very rapid fire. There have been instances in the past where this has caused tragic consequences. So remember, the oxygen can never be together with oil or grease. However, the risk of fire and explosion is, I would say, similarly the same in case of both of these. And actually, the gaseous ones might pose a bigger risk of fire and explosion because they actually do have the oxygen in them already. And this is actually quite interesting because in aviation, we use something called AVO2. So an oxygen that is specifically certified for aviation purposes. It is a dry oxygen, so nothing freezes inside. There is not a lot of water content inside, as opposed to medical or other types of oxygens which would not be certified for aviation use. And also remember that the oxygen that we use in aviation will come in black bottles or sometimes green with a label of AVO2. And I think this is everything that you should know in terms of oxygen. I hope this has helped you and this will make your studying easier in the future. Oxygen is a small topic, however, very interesting, and you'll see how it translates into flight planning and then later also HPL, or if you've already done these subjects, then you probably know. So all the best with your studies. I wish you best results in your exams, and I'll see you in our next video. Bye-bye.